The Ray D'Arcy Show on RTE Radio 1 with Volkswagen.
51551 ray at rte.ie. We're joined in the studio by Gerry Grennell. Now, Gerry has worked with all the greats, Meryl Streep, Marlon Brando, Heath Ledger. He's an acting and voice coach, and he also teaches in Dublin at the Bow Street Academy. You're very welcome, Gerry.
Thanks for having me.
You've a fascinating job.
It is to some. It is. No, it's a good job. It's good fun.
Yeah. So you get a credit and all those names at the end of a movie. You'll be in there.
Very often, yeah. Sometimes if I come in and I don't do the full gig, I won't get a credit because I'm not on the full run of the show. But generally, yeah, I'll get a credit.
And does every movie have a person like you on it?
No. Usually I get employed in by a client. Production companies don't tend to employ me or people like me unless they really need somebody like that, or they come up against a problem, maybe an accent issue or a voice issue or an acting issue. But usually it's a client that would bring me in. Okay,
so explain what you do then. Because is it some sort of wizardry or is it?
No, I think it's actually, well, I'm a good listener, and if it comes down to it, voice work with Heath Ledger, for example, he worked on his characters through voice. So he found that it helped him to discover aspects of himself through the voice, and when he was working on a particular character or a particular emotion, that his voice would change and accommodate those emotions, and then through playing with that and throwing ideas around, come up with various approaches to the character, and then flesh it out.
So he played the Joker in The Dark Knight.
He did.
He got an Oscar for...
He got a posthumous Oscar for Dark Knight.
Yeah, and he was brilliant in that role.
Yes, he was quite extraordinary. I think it's one of those movies that will always be on the shelf. Everybody will take it out every now and again. It's one of those great movies, great performance.
He got the script, right? He has to go on set. You're there with him. What sort of things is he saying to you or asking you?
Well, we started prepping. I mean, it's not you don't just go onto set.
No,
you got a script. He got offered the role, and he gave me a call, and he asked me, was I free? Well, I said, yeah. Of course I'm free. Yeah, fantastic idea, fantastic role. And then we met up and we started. What happens really is, client will send me a script and read it through, get an idea of where the storyline goes and so on, and then really throw it about, ideas. Well, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And sometimes it's rubbish. Sometimes it's there's a gem in there somewhere hidden, in my comments. But the first thing and the most important thing to have is a trust with the client or with the artist, so that they're free to say that it's rubbish, or they're also free to say that it's a great idea and actually they thought of it first.
All right. And where does the director fit into this process?
Well, this is before the director. The director would then come in the rehearsal process, but not necessarily in the rehearsal process. Obviously, there's a conversation between the director and the artist anyway, because that's the casting process. But I would come in then once the job is in the bag, as it were, and then I'd start working with the artist. Generally, someone who wants to work with me. And we've worked before. I've worked on pretty much all of Heath's gigs, so we had a shorthand, so it was a lot easier and a lot quicker to get into character and work on script and so on.
And are you a sounding board?
Yeah, that's a good description.
Yeah.
I'm sort of.
So he'll say, "What if I do this accent, or what if I change up an octave here for this scene?" And you'll go, "That may or may not work."
I suppose it can be that. It can be that specific, but at the early stages, it's very much more about the person. Psychological profiling, that kind of thing that actors tend to do anyway. There's an element of that in every actor's process.
You're fascinated by the human voice.
Human voice is interesting, yeah. Well, it's actually it's an instrument. We're all instruments. It just depends on how we use that instrument. With Heath particularly, it was his route into character. With other people, it's not necessarily that, but voice is obviously going to be a part of it because, if you've got dialogue, you have to hear it.
It's sort of an aspect of actors that is probably underestimated.
Well, we don't think about it, do we? We speak every day. We talk to each other on the telephone, or we're buying something. We have a particular voice, or we want something, or if somebody goes out on a date, they've got a voice. If you're looking for a job, you have another voice. We don't think about those voices. It's part of who we are. It's part of how we operate. We take a lot for granted.
And what's the most important thing with actors? Is it to get them at a stage where it's completely natural, whatever they're doing, although it's not natural, obviously, it's a very unnatural state to be in with all these cameras and people around you and you playing a person that you're not?
Well, I think also, in your case, for example, you're using your voice all day, every day, and your familiarity and your personality is encapsulated in that voice. And you're at ease with your job, you're at ease with who you are, and you're at ease with how this operates, how the business of being a presenter on radio. So in many ways, you'd probably understand that too, because familiarity also removes the element of fear of failure, because fear of the unknown is also is conducive to fear of failure, because we don't know what's coming around the corner. The more you understand of what you're doing, the less inclined you are to worry about what you're doing. So with an actor in the prep phase, because you're dealing with a different character, finding those aspects of the character in yourself that suit you, rather than trying to mimic or to copy somebody, that's a job that the actor has to do in prep. But then the actor gets used to doing that. The more they do it, the more familiar they become with the process, and then the less waste of time they have to spend doing something they might not actually get any result from.
I'm rubbish at accents, and I'm fascinated by people who are good at accents, particularly when it comes to a moment in a film when there's high emotion, like if there's a row or sadness or something like that. Because I'm not saying it's easy, but people can do accents when they're just delivering general dialogue. But then when emotions are heightened, it seems to me it's more difficult, is it?
Well, it is, yeah, because when we get emotional about something, we go to default. We go to who we are. We express ourselves. Sometimes unfavorably. Sometimes we don't actually want to express ourselves that way. I'm a past master at regretting what I said. But and how I say it also is really important. If you're doing an accent and you haven't fully integrated that into who you are, or familiarize yourself sufficiently with how the accent operates, it can easily happen that if you then commit to a strong emotion, that you'll go to your own natural means of expressing that. That can throw you a little bit, and that's a difficult one. Yes, it is hard to do. So it takes a lot of work to get you to the point where that doesn't interfere with your performance.
Is it? I want to talk about some of the other people you've worked with, but is it easier then if you don't have to do an accent? Because that's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah. It would be easier. But then, on the other hand, if you're used to working in accents, or if you're used to working through the voice, which Heath, for example, was, it was almost a source of comfort, because that's the area of work you're familiar with, and
does it help you develop a character then?
Oh yeah,
you're going somewhere else, not just.
Well, if you think about one accent as opposed to another, so you'll notice that some accents have longer vowels. People stress in different places, and
what's the most difficult accent to do?
The most difficult accent to do depends on where you're from.
Because, right. Okay. Why do people get the Irish accent so bad? So.
I think because, well, with any accent, the problem is that you come with a stereotypical stereotype. You're the impression of an accent, and then trying to break that is very difficult. It's quite a complicated process.
And of course, my ear will be tuned to yours because we are Irish. So maybe an American audience wouldn't be as critical as we would be.
An American audience wouldn't. And sometimes Americans would think an Irish accent, depending on the Irish accent, it sounds, what part of America are you from?
Yeah. So they want
very neutral.
They want the bigora bigosh top of the morning to you.
They do.
That's what they expect.
Yeah. And
a lot of people deliver.
and some Americans, well, not even just Americans, but some people who are not Irish think that Irish people do say bigora and
bigosh, yeah,
and be the hoorie fanoorie.
I mentioned Meryl Streep and Marlon Brando. They're like huge figures.
Yeah.
Are they threatening? Is it daunting when you're asked to meet somebody like that?
Well, it is. It can be if you build yourself up to meeting someone that you consider you consider highly, and you've got a high opinion of them. But as I just mentioned to Shimmy on the way, Shimmy Marcus, who's actually partner in Bow Street, and we were laughing that the first time I met Bruce Willis, and I know it sounds hilarious. First time I met Bruce Willis, I didn't know who he was, right. Which kind of made it easy for me to work with him because then there wasn't that I could cut to the chase.
What did you work with him on?
I worked with him on a whole bunch of movies. The first one was Hostage, which he was kind of coming out of semi-retirement, and he brought me in to help kind of just get his focus back and that kind of thing. Not that he isn't incapable of.
You sound like a bit of like in name you're an accent coach or a voice coach, but really you're some sort of confidence guru, are you? Is that part of it as well?
Well, no. Well, I think what happens is because from my training in Alexander technique, I've discovered a great deal about how we use ourselves and the misconceptions we have about.
What's the Alexander technique?
Alexander technique is, well, actually Alexander was Frederick Matthias Alexander was his name. He was an early 20th century actor. Shakespearean actor, lost his voice, Australian, and lost his voice, and spent 7 years in researching why, because back then we didn't know anything about repetitive strain injury or any of those conditions. If you were nervous on stage, you had to just get over it. If you had worries about this, that, or the other, what happened to him when he'd go on stage, he'd lose his voice, which is not unusual actually for actors. Or for people who present on stage or
public speaking. They say it's up there in the top 5 most feared things.
Yeah, yes, and a lot of people, they suffer considerable strain and a great deal of stress when you're working on stage or presenting any subject, and that. For me, it was fascinating because I was a musician first and foremost. I studied music, and then I lost the use of my left hand for a period and discovered I started a theatre company, and then in the theatre company came across the Alexander technique, and then the Alexander technique fascinated me. Went off to train as an Alexander teacher, and then discovering, well, I was into theatre by that stage, and then wanted to study theatre and blah blah blah.
So what does it do? Is it a sort of relaxation process, or?
Some people would say it's relaxation. Some people would say it's about your spine. It's a use. It's about balancing the energy you employ to achieve a particular result.
Is it posture?
It's to do with posture. It's to do with
breathing.
It's to do with. Well, Alexander had a great phrase. He said, "It won't change a criminal. It just make him a better criminal." Right.
Because, hyperventilating, because imagine when people go out and they're nervous, that's a big thing.
It's huge, yeah.
Because the heart rate increases, and that does all sorts of things to your breathing, and then that affects your speech, and then you're not talking the way you normally talk, and you probably go up a few octaves, and it's all a bit tight and all a bit rushed.
Yeah. Mouth dries, all of those things, yeah.
So the Alexander technique deals with all of that.
Yeah, I mean it's fairly logical. It's not rocket science. You know, what happens when you go on stage. Well, you don't want to be there because you've got all these faces looking at you, and it's no surprise or no coincidence. Maybe I think I've used it. It's no surprise that we say to shoot a movie. You know, let's shoot this. You know, a lot of young actors think they're in front of a firing squad.
Right, okay.
But if you're doing a presentation, and one of the big things is just finding strategies to eliminate or at least moderate the stress that you find yourself under, and a lot of that comes from the fight or flight situation. And so what happens if it's fight or flight? So you logicize, you go, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to die.
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen?
What's the worst thing that can happen?
I'll
Then you go on stage
of it.
and you know what the worst
and then my
thing
career's
is.
over.
Yeah.
And then you're hard.
Yeah. And there's like, I'm going to heart attack, and then you're carried off in an ambulance, and then
So we usually catastrophize things as opposed to logicize them. Yeah. So Marlon Brando, you know, one of the most famous Hollywood actors, and did he ask you for advice? Is that the way?
No. My experience with him was sitting down, drinking tea, and eating sandwiches because, you know, that's what he wanted to do, and it was fascinating. It was a lovely thing when I met him first. He introduced himself. I mean, Marlon Brando introducing himself. Hello.
Well, you didn't know Bruce Willis. So come on, you know history. He probably heard it from Bruce Willis.
Well, I've heard of him, but I didn't actually recognize him when I met him. Marlon Brando, I did know. I did meet. He's an iconic figure, influenced film acting right from the get-go. Extraordinarily talented.
So having met all these people, been in their company, seen them probably a little bit vulnerable because, you know, they're asking you and you're a sounding board. What makes a star?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, if we had that down, wouldn't that? My gosh, that would be the golden ticket. I think really what makes a star.
I suppose another way of putting it is, what have all these people got in common?
They have, that's the technique we teach at the school, and in Bow Street we all of the years of working on stage and behind the camera and working with the people that I've worked with, there's one consistent element, and that's they haven't lost the childlike quality that most of us at some point revisit after we've retired.
So they're still playing in a way.
They're still playing, yeah. There's an element of curiosity, which you display. You know, I mean, there's a curiosity there that is it's kind
childlike.
It's infectious.
Thanks, Gerry.
Yeah. Well, no, you're not childish. Childlike. But that's one of the characteristics. A really big element that threads through everybody I've worked with. And when they go in front of the camera, something else appears. Something that's quite different to when they're off camera.
Yeah.
And I've been curious about that for quite a number of years.
You've worked with Tom Cruise as well. I saw him on Graham Norton there on Friday night. He does his own stunts, and they had amazing footage of him breaking his ankle while shooting Mission Impossible 6. He did that classic, you know, where they're running across the rooftops, and he jumps the chasm, and he sort of doesn't land it quite well. What's he like? No, you won't answer. You're not allowed to answer this question, are you? What's he like?
He's probably one of the nicest guys you could meet. So polite, so sweet, knows everybody, speaks to everybody as though they're equals, and works. He works 24 hours round the clock. Sometime
he has a big work ethic.
Yes, extraordinary.
Now, Bow Street, Barry. Is it Keoghan? Is that how you pronounce it?
Keoghan, yes. Barry Keoghan.
He's come through it. He's a very exciting talent, isn't he?
Well, he started. He was in the factory, which is we started in the factory, which was in just beside Boland's Mills down in
Barrow Street.
Yeah, that's right. And he was in there, and came through that system, as did a bunch of others. We have quite a gang of young actors who are going up the ranks, and they're on screen, you know.
And can people go corporately to you to get your dip into your expertise?
Yeah, dipping into that now, we find that it's actually a lot of people in the corporate world are interested in what it is that goes to make a good actor.
Right.
And that's an interesting.
And finally, politicians. Have you ever worked with politicians?
I haven't worked with a politician. I haven't yet. No, but
would you be interested in working with a politician?
I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Right.
Put it out there.
What did they say? Politics was what, showbiz for ugly people. That's not true anymore, but that's what they used to say.
Yeah, ugly people in showbiz.
Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Jerry, real pleasure.
Same here.
And is it Bow Street? There's a website there.
There is a website, Bow Street Academy. If you just Google that, you'll get led.
Thanks very much, Jerry. Thank you.
Cheers.
The Ray D'Arcy Show on RTE Radio 1.